Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing my labor and delivery experience video. I am going to be trying to do Vlogcember, which if you don't know, it's a video every day of the month of December. So to start this off on December 1st, I figured this would be a very exciting video to do. I've had a couple close friends request that I do this to share my experience. So grab a snack, grab a drink, grab a cocktail, whatever you prefer. This will probably be a somewhat long video. Kinley is actually, I just laid her down for a nap, so I'm hoping that she'll stay asleep for this whole video. I probably should have taken notes so that I don't get lost or miss anything, because some of it is a little fuzzy. But we're just gonna try to get through it, and hopefully I remember everything. It was a crazy experience, but definitely one that I will never forget ever. It was incredible. So yeah, if you want to hear what my labor and delivery experience was like, then just keep watching. Okay, so let's go to, first of all, my due date was March 12th, and when I was 38 weeks pregnant, we went ahead and scheduled an induction date just in case she did not come on her own. And obviously I was going every week getting checked, and I was dilated about 1 centimeter and never changed. So as it got closer and closer to the induction date and her due date, which actually I don't even know if I said, but we scheduled her induction on the 12th, which was her due date. And I was supposed to go in that evening. Oh, no, wait. See, I already have my dates mixed up. I was supposed to go in on the 11th. And then, so our induction date was scheduled for the 11th. And then she was supposed to hopefully be born on the 12th, which was her due date. So Wednesday, we were supposed to go in that evening around 6 o'clock and start the induction process with hopefully her being born on March 12th. So obviously our families were coming into town, our parents, all of that. And on Wednesday at I want to say 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I get a phone call from the hospital, pretty much saying that they had no rooms available and they needed to push my induction date just by a day, which in the moment I got emotional and frustrated about, because I was just kind of okay, why schedule something if you don't have beds open? But now looking back on it, obviously they needed to keep some rooms available for anybody that actually went into labor. So I get it, and I understood it. I just got really emotional because I was so nervous, and I thought we were going to obviously be able to start this whole process, and then realizing I had to wait an entire day. I didn't really sleep the night before on Tuesday because I was so anxious for Wednesday, and then I was like, okay, well now I'm not gonna get any sleep tonight because I'm just gonna be so anxious and nervous for tomorrow. So anyways, Thursday rolls around and they call again and they ask if instead of 6, if we could come in at 7. So finally we are headed to the hospital, and I'm like, okay, thank God, this is happening. And I hadn't felt anything. Obviously my water didn't break. I hadn't felt any contractions. So we get to the hospital and we do all of the, it really wasn't I didn't have to do really any paperwork when we got there. It was more just a couple things, and then they took me directly into the room. So the hospital that I delivered at, we had only one room. It was the delivery room and the recovery room, which I honestly kind of liked. Just that way we didn't have to move around, and I thought it was convenient. And it was a really nice room. When we had toured the hospital, they had some smaller rooms and some bigger rooms, and I was a little nervous for the smaller room because my mom was there and she was going to be with me the whole time, as well as Kaylin, obviously. And I was nervous to have a tiny room with all the nurses and doctor and everything else, but luckily we got a really nice big room, so that was nice. And pretty much it just kind of all started. I mean, I changed into my gown, and then they had me pretty much sign my life away. If you've had a baby, you know you have to sign paperwork and you go through all of the processes and all of that. So we did all of that, and then they kind of started everything. I apparently was having contractions before I even got to the hospital, and I didn't know. They were clearly very small contractions because I didn't feel a thing. Once they hooked me up to everything, they were like, "You're having contractions. Do you not feel that?" And I'm like, "No, like I don't feel a thing." I thought I had a high pain tolerance. So I was like, well, okay, like I don't feel this. I know they're clearly going to get more intense and worse, but like I don't feel anything. So I was like, okay, this might not be like, you know, as bad as I thought. And then they started me on Pitocin, and then they wanted to put a Foley bulb, like balloon, inside, and it was supposed to help stretch my cervix, obviously. And they said that once I was 4 centimeters, it was supposed to fall out on its own. So I was like, okay, well, let's start this process. Let's go. I don't really feel like my contractions started getting aggressive for a couple hours. I was like, okay, I can start to feel that. Was really kicking in, and I was like, okay, like I can start to feel it. Like I'm getting kind of uncomfortable. They don't really hurt. It's just not fun. Like it's not pleasant. And that kind of went on for a couple hours, and then things really started to get intense. They realized that the Pitocin was actually causing Kinley's heart rate to drop. And then I already have like relatively low blood pressure as it is. But the Pitocin was causing her heart rate to drop, and then my blood pressure was dropping as well. And every time they like went through a couple rounds of taking me off Pitocin and then putting me back on. And every time they would take me off, her heart rate would go back up to normal. Every time they would put me on, her heart rate would then drop. It never dropped so much that it was like super scary, but like it's not, you know, it wasn't an easy feeling knowing every time they put me back on this medication, it was affecting her. So our nurse seemed to be a little bit concerned, and so she called our doctor in, and our doctor obviously checked me and did all of that. And also I wasn't really progressing that quickly. So it wasn't anything concerning, but it was just one of those things where, you know, I just wasn't dilating that fast. So called our doctor in, and our doctor checked everything, and then, you know, our nurse told her about the Pitocin issue, and our doctor really didn't seem to have any kind of concern with it. She was like, okay, well, it's fine. Just, you know, keep doing the thing, keep doing it. But our nurse was like, I don't like it. I don't like that it's making her heart rate drop so much. So this is the part that's blurry. I honestly can't remember if they completely took me off Pitocin or not. But her heart rate ended up getting stabilized. My blood pressure was still low, but again, it wasn't anything concerning because I normally have low blood pressure anyway. So it was probably, I want to say maybe around like 11. I don't know. I'm just ballpark guessing, and you know, everything's kind of just blurry, and nobody really pays attention to time when you're in there. It's just kind of like what's happening. Things started getting really, really intense as far as my contractions, to the point where they tried to get me to stand up, and I didn't want to. I honestly felt like I just needed to lay down. And now looking back on it, if we do end up having any more children, I will probably try to get up and walk around and walk through them, or like, you know, bounce on the ball and do all the things that you learn in like the childbirth classes, because I didn't do any of it. I literally sat my butt in that bed and did not move until after she was born. The pain that came with my contractions was so incredibly intense. I started apparently making animal noises. That's the best way Kaylin can describe it. I don't know. It was just, my body was just doing it. These noises were just coming out of me. you know, I wasn't like screaming and I wasn't doing anything crazy. But I mean, it was not fun. It was not pleasant. I did end up getting an epidural, but I almost waited too long. I, you know, was scared to, not that it mattered, but for me, I wanted to see how long I could push myself until I was like, okay, I can't take anymore. And I also didn't want to, not that you are, so please, if you got your epidural as soon as you got to the hospital, trust me, I will probably do it next time. So I'm not like, speaking negatively about that when I say this, but I didn't want to seem like a pansy. And that was just my mental game for me. I thought I had a high pain tolerance. I wanted to see how long I could push myself. But it got to the point where I was legitimately like just shaking, and it wasn't from like the labor shakes that you normally get, because I got those after I got my epidural. I was legitimately physically in so much pain that I was having to grab, I was on my side, I had to rotate from side to side, and I was having to grab on to the side of the bed, and I was just literally like shaking it and just making these noises. The best way I can describe it, getting stabbed repeatedly over and over in the stomach. I mean, it's so intense and it's so hard to describe, and they come on so fast and they're so strong. And I could tell, you can tell when it's building and when it gets up to that peak and then when it starts to come down. And there were multiple times that, you know, because they track it obviously on the monitors and you can see how high up it goes and all of that to see the strength of the contraction. And you know, the ones that I was like, okay, this is starting to hurt were, you know, in the 50s, 55, 60. And then it started to get really, really bad where they were shooting up 90, you know, 100, all of that. And finally I was like, okay, I need an epidural. And I've completely forgot to tell you guys, this is why I should have taken notes, because I'm all over the place. My Foley bulb that they had put in to help dilate me actually did not fall out when I was 4 centimeters. It fell out when I was 6. Or actually, no, it didn't even fall out. They kept checking me, and finally they were like, oh, well, you're 6 centimeters, and it never fell out, and it was supposed to fall out when I was 4. And that didn't happen. So they kept checking me. I probably should have like asked my mom or Kaylin before I decided to film this video, the order of things, because again, some of it's so blurry to me. I honestly can't remember if I got my epidural before my water broke or if my water broke and then I got my epidural. But I remember, it was after. No, wait. My water broke before I got my epidural. So they didn't have to break my water. My water broke on its own. But I remember my water breaking and just feeling liquid. I didn't feel like a gush, but I just felt liquid. Like I was honestly, like I was peeing myself. And I said I'm either peeing myself or my water just broke. And they got me up to go to the bathroom. And I feel like that is the only time I got up. So they were like, okay, go pee and then come back. You might just, have to pee. So I went to the bathroom, I came back, I laid back down, and it was still coming out. And I was like, I'm pretty sure my water broke. And so they checked me again, and sure enough, my water broke. And then that's when the contractions started getting really intense. So I asked for my epidural, and then our nurse looked at me and she was like, you might not be able to get one. Like, this is progressing really quickly. She's coming. You might have waited too long. And that is the moment. I hadn't cried. I hadn't freaked out about any of it. I didn't even cry when, my contractions were getting really bad. It was more just obviously me shaking and me like making noises. Didn't cry. The moment they told me I might not get an epidural, I freaked out. My mind went to, I can't do this. I didn't know how I was going to get her out with this pain. I didn't know how I was going to focus on pushing when this was happening. I was like, I commend the women who have natural births. Until you're in that experience and in that situation, you truly do not understand it. You are superwoman. You are literally the definition of freaking Wonder Woman. Like, it's insane to me. So I freaked out. They called the anesthesiologist, tried to get him as fast as they could, ended up being able to get it. They had my mom leave the room. Kaylin got to stay, which apparently is not common. I guess most husbands have to leave, but they let him stay. They actually got him a chair to sit on so he like wouldn't pass out. And my 2 biggest contractions and the most painful contractions happened while I was getting my epidural. Girl, let me tell you, the amount of strength you have to have not to move when you were having a contraction and to stay in that position, it's insane. So it ended up taking them 45 minutes to do my epidural. My nurse like stood in front of me and let me hold on to her because she knew I was having contractions. So she let me hold on to her while he was obviously inserting my epidural, and it only went in my right side at first. And so he kept doing it over and over and over, and it kept only going in my right side. So it was to the point where I was like, I literally can't even feel anything on my right side. And my left side was still, I could feel everything. So I think that's why it took so long, because he had to keep doing it over and over. But I mean, probably by the end of it, I think I was sweating so bad because I had the worst contractions, and I just had to stay in this like curled up ball position. So trying not to move. And this poor nurse, I probably squeezed her so hard. So got my epidural, and I finally started to feel numb in my left. I could feel the epidural kicking in. And they had me lay there for, I want to say probably 15-20 minutes, and I could still feel pain. As much as he had pumped into my right side, I could still feel, and I know you can still feel pressure. I knew you were going to be able to still feel pressure, because that's how obviously you're able to push through contractions. You can feel them coming on and you push through it. No, I could still feel pain. So I was like, is there any way I could get more? Because this still really hurts. It wasn't to the point where I was making noises again anymore, or like having to like shake the bed, or be on my side. I could be on my back, but it still hurt. And of course, you know, still me in my mind trying to be this tough woman. I'm like, you know, I can do it, but like it still really hurts. So they finally tracked him down. I don't know if they gave me something else other than my epidural, but maybe I was so tired, I don't know. But it was to the point where once I got my epidural and everything kicked in, I was so incredibly loopy. So this was all when the pandemic was starting and everything was shutting down. Actually, the weekend she was born is when everything shut down. So luckily, obviously, Kaylin got to be in the room, my mom got to be in the room, so I didn't have to go through what, you know, moms are going through right now, where they're only allowed, you know, one person, or not even their husbands, and they're having to wear their masks and hair nets and all of that. I didn't have to do that. What did happen was, obviously, his parents came into town. His mom lives in Nashville. His dad and stepmom live in Indianapolis. They came in. They actually ended up kicking everybody out of the hospital. So they didn't get to see her. Actually, I take that back. They did get to see her for like 2 seconds. But they wanted to see me before, like after I got my epidural and all of that. So, and I obviously was like, hey, like, you know, they can come in the room, but everything was happening. So they came in, and I remember my father-in-law was in there, and my right leg kept moving. And I was like, who is moving my leg? Like, somebody keeps moving my leg. And they all looked at me like I was crazy. And they're like, Rebecca, you're doing it yourself. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, somebody is picking up my leg. This was literally from either me being so loopy, or they gave me something. And everybody is convinced that they gave me something, because I mean, I literally could not tell that I was moving my own leg. And maybe this has happened to other people. If you have experienced this, please let me know in the comments below. But like my right leg kept twitching, and it was only my right. And I thought somebody was touching my leg. So they all got a good laugh. I thought I was going crazy. So everybody got to come in, and they only let them come in like one at a time. So my stepdad came in, and then Kaylin's dad, so my father-in-law and his stepmom came in, and then his mom came in. And obviously my mom was in there, so she just stayed. And my doctor checked me, and she was like, okay, so you're probably gonna have this baby around, 7 or 8 o'clock. And I was like, in the morning or at night? And granted, I had gotten there at 7 o'clock on Thursday, so 7 p.m. on Thursday. And this was probably around, 11:30. And she was like, no, like probably tomorrow night, so Friday night, probably around 7 or 8. And I kind of had another mental thing, like a little mental freak out, because I was like, okay, I understand that some people aren't in labor that long and others are in labor for a long time. My sister-in-law was in labor for like 30 some hours with my niece. So I was like terrified that that was going to happen. So I was like, oh, okay. And after I got my epidural, I started progressing. It started to slow down, which is what your epidural does. But then it was kind of like between, I want to say maybe 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. I started to progress rather quickly. So by 6, I was at 10 centimeters. So 6 a.m. And the doctor came in, and she was like, well, you proved me wrong. Like, you're about to have this baby. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is about to happen. I'm gonna have to do it. I'm gonna have to push this baby out. Like, here we go. So they obviously, lower the light and get all their stuff, and everything just started kind of becoming real. I knew obviously once I got in the hospital and they hooked me up to everything that this was happening, like duh. But it wasn't until they were getting everything ready for me to start pushing that I was like I'm about to have a baby. Like, this is literally, my life is going to be, I just get really emotional talking about it, but I was like, this is about to happen. Like, I'm about to meet my daughter. So I started pushing around 6 a.m. And I pushed for an hour and a half straight. I think I only took 2 breaks for 2 contractions. But I never took a period of time where I wasn't pushing. I literally pushed with every single contraction, I think except for 2. I was finally like, I need a break. Because I hadn't done this before, she was my first baby. When I first started pushing, I wasn't pushing like low. I wasn't pushing like near my butt, like how they tell you to. I was pushing all in my head. So all of the pressure was going to my head, and my face was turning really red, and they started realizing like, you're not pushing low enough like how you should. And because I pushed so hard like that the first couple times, it was really hard for me for that hour and a half. I got to the point where I honestly felt like I was going to pass out. They ended up having to give me oxygen. And my mom was holding one of my legs. Kaylin was like right here by my head, and he was like rubbing my head. And then my mom ended up having to, with every push, like push me forward and hunch me up, so that my body, like I could figure out how to push like through my butt, because I wasn't understanding it, I guess. And so finally I got in this rhythm, and like I said, I pushed for almost an hour and a half, and then at 7:21 on March 13th, she was born. Seeing your, child for the first time, there's no words to explain it. I literally get emotional every time I talk about it. It's just an intense, crazy feeling. So it took a while, obviously, to get her head out, but once her head was out, she literally just like flew out. I ended up getting a 1st-degree tear, so not bad. but I got one because she came out so fast. Her fingernails actually are what cut me. So normally it's from, you know, them getting the shoulder out and all of that. And, you know, they normally tell you once the head's out, they do one shoulder and then one shoulder. And they're like, okay, you need to listen. Like when we tell you to stop pushing, stop pushing. But it was literally like her head came out and then they were like, okay, give me a push. And then I pushed and she literally just flew out. And her fingernails got stuck on me and ended up cutting me that way. So I had some stitches on my left, but it was only a 1st-degree tear, so nothing too bad. But yeah, so she was 6 pounds, 14 ounces, and she was 20.5 inches long. And she was born at 7:21 a.m. on March 13th. So it was insane. You know, when I went into it, I was a little scared that I was going to have to end up having a C-section. I don't know why. That just was in my mind. I'm not a relatively big person. I mean, I'm like 5'4.5", and you know, I gained like 30 pounds in my pregnancy. I was I think 150, like 156 or 153 when she was born. I was, I think 123 before I got pregnant. So I'm not like a really big person. So when they were measuring her, obviously during my ultrasounds, they kept saying that she was a big baby, and they were like, yeah, she's, you know, and again, it could be off a pound or so either way, but they were measuring her at like, you know, 7-8 pounds already. And I was like, and this was at like 38 weeks pregnant. And I was like, and you know, Kalen, my husband, he's, you know, 5'7", and yeah, he's like, you know, a bigger guy. So I was like, okay, she's gonna be like, she might be super broad, you know, she might have a big frame. But when they said that, they were like, yeah, she might be, you know, on the bigger side. I freaked out a little bit because I was like, you know, I'm not that big of a person. Like, how am I supposed to push a big baby out? But, you know, my doctor, once I hit like 39.5 weeks, my doctor was like, your baby is not big. Like, your baby's small. So I had that little like fear in my head, and not that there's anything wrong with C-sections, but you know, that's just another, I mean, it's surgery, you know, they're literally cutting you open. So I was nervous for that, but that was never anything that was brought up during my labor experience. And that was honestly pretty much it. I mean, there were no complications. She didn't have jaundice. You know, she passed all of her tests. There was, you know, they didn't have to extend our hospital stay for any reason. I ended up, like the second day we were there, so Saturday, I ended up, I started to pass blood clots that hadn't passed yet. So I ended up taking a shower and going to the bathroom, and when I stood up, I got gushes of blood. So I had Kaylin call the nurse, and she checked me, and she was like, we just need you to lay down, but like, this is normal. Like, you're actually just passing blood clots. Like, it's okay. The one thing that I do want to touch on though, because I do know a lot of people have questioned this, and a lot of people have, you know, they don't really understand the whole like induction because of a placenta thing. So my doctor does not like her patients to go over 40 weeks, to go over the due date, because she said the lifespan of a placenta is only so long. So typically she will induce her patients between 40 and 41 weeks. And she said she doesn't even like to go to 41 weeks. So I was a little nervous for that because sometimes obviously with inductions, it can lengthen the labor experience. Just because if your baby's not ready to come yet, that baby ain't coming yet. Luckily that was not the case in my situation, but once I got Kinley out and my placenta was out, my placenta was actually disintegrating. So she actually had to go in and get some of it out because it was done. I remember there's like a video of like me holding Kenley on my chest once I got her out, and then the doctor getting the placenta out, and she was like, yeah, this placenta was done. She was like, this wasn't gonna last long. So I'm happy that we decided to go ahead with the induction and not just wait. and see when I would go naturally. Honestly, I will probably do it again with the next baby if we decide to have any more children. I don't know though. You know, I do want to know what the experience would have been like if my water would have broke on its own as far as just me going into labor naturally. I don't think I was that far off, considering when I got there, they told me I was starting to have contractions, and clearly I didn't know. But yeah, so that was my labor and delivery experience. It wasn't anything crazy. The hospital was great. I did have one nurse that, you know, I think I was just so in my emotions, and, you know, I did attempt to breastfeed. It's a whole long story. I know people are very, this topic is very sensitive for a lot of people. For me, I was okay either way. As long as my baby was fed, I was fine. I wanted to try breastfeeding. Apparently it is a genetic thing. My milk never came in. So I breastfed her in the hospital, and when we got home and then at her first pediatric appointment, she had actually almost lost a full pound. And that, you know, that was kind of hard because for me, I was like, so I'm pretty much starving my baby without realizing it. And that was a little emotional for me. But then, you know, when the doctor was like, you know, we might have to supplement, and I was like, fine. Like, I just want my baby to be healthy. I want her to be fed. And yeah, apparently, which it doesn't happen in a lot of women, she did end up she got my colostrum. So obviously that's, you know, that was great. And with the nurse that I'm referring to, it was just very intense. You know, Kinley didn't have an issue latching. It was just clearly she wasn't really getting anything. And, you know, this nurse was just very intense with it. So Kinley was crying. I started to cry. I was getting frustrated, and she was like shoving my boob in Kinley's mouth. And like, I was just kind of like, I need a minute. And I didn't know how to say that. And I didn't say that. I probably should have spoke up, but I didn't. I was just, you know, she's a professional. So I was just kind of like letting her do her thing, but it was very crazy and very intense that night. And then the second night we were there, we had this really sweet lady, and it was awesome. So my experience all in all was great. I mean, I can't say anything, you know, negative about it. It wasn't, you know, there were no extremely scary moments other than with the Pitocin and Kinley's heart rate. But again, it never got so low where it was like, okay, this is like, now I'm like getting worked up. Like, this is really bad. Yes, it was, you know, it wasn't a comfortable feeling knowing her heart rate was dropping, but it never got in a scary level. So yeah, I mean, it was great. I can't really say anything negative about it. Yeah, that was my labor and delivery experience. Hopefully I've been inserting some clips or I don't really have a lot. I was gonna try to film it, but again, in that moment, I could have just set my camera up. I really wanted, you know, that moment when I pushed her out, obviously not like full frontal, but like I wanted to have my camera off to the side. And in that moment, that was like the last thing I cared about, honestly. I mean, I would love to have that to look back on, but it, you know, my mind never went to let me pull out a camera or like somebody film this. It was just like, okay, let's go. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that little story of my labor and delivery. I'm sorry if it was kind of all over the place. Again, I should have taken notes and I didn't. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you have not. Push that bell to be notified whenever I make future videos. Share with your friends. I would love to grow this family. And I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye.